On this edition of Independent Sources, has Mayor-elect Bill de Blasio's perceived snub of the Catholic Church already cost him a valuable ally?
I would hope that people would see it for perhaps maybe a mistake on his part, but not something that was necessarily intentional or that he's out to, he's not targeting the church. I don't think that's necessarily the case.
And finding an audience for African films in New York.
The type of movie that I'm trying to make is universal. It's general. Like you just asked me if a lot of Africans are affected by coming from that situation. I say it's everybody. Indian, Japanese, everybody.
Those stories and more coming up on Independent Sources. Welcome to Independent Sources. I'm Zyphus Lebrun. Mayor-elect Bill de Blasio is a few weeks away from his inauguration, and he's already angered many Catholics in the city. Mr. de Blasio's 60-member transition team included 5 Protestant, Jewish, and Muslim clergy members, but no Catholic priests. The Catholic League for Religious and Civil Rights has already blasted the mayor-elect for his snub. Some observers believe this may be a sign of the Catholic Church's waning influence in the city, or perhaps a signal that its conservative stance on issues such as abortion and gay marriage is pushing the church to the sidelines. Sarah Pizon sat down with Tim Reedy of the National Catholic Weekly America magazine. They talked about whether the Catholic Church's influence was ebbing and what Mr. de Blasio could do to win back some who feel slighted.
So Tim, Bill de Blasio's transition team, 2 Protestant ministers, 2 rabbis, 1 imam, no Catholic priest. What do you think this means for New York's Catholic community?
Well, first of all, I think it's surprising that he actually includes people with religious voices on his transition team. I think that's a good thing. It is surprising there isn't somebody who's Catholic there. I mean, the Catholic Church has played such a large role in the growth of this city over the years. It seems like an oversight. I don't think it perhaps wasn't intentional, but it's something that perhaps should be rectified.
Traditionally, Catholics in the city have been, Irish and Italians. Who makes up New York's Catholic community today?
Yeah, I think that's changing. I mean, I think Irish and Italians were definitely the center of it for such a long time. And even when those communities tended to move out of the city, the leadership in the Catholic Church in New York was still very Irish and Italian. Right now, you certainly have more Latinos in the city, people from Puerto Rico, Dominican Republic. They make up a large segment of the Catholic population, but their concerns may be different than the Irish and Italians before them, and they may be less interested in politics at this moment, more in immigration issues or living wage, those kind of issues.
How is New York's Catholic community reacting to Bill de Blasio's transition team?
Well, there's certainly definitely people who are upset. I know Bill Donahue at the Catholic League released a press release. I think generally Catholics are open to the new administration, and the people I know and talk to seem to want to work with him. I mean, he has a Catholic background. He comes from an Italian family. I know he's visited Italy. He had an uncle who was a priest, so he has some connections with the Catholic community. He worked actually for a time in Maryland with the Quixote Center, which has Catholic connections. So, and certainly his message is resonating with some Catholics who are definitely concerned about the poor, things that Pope Francis is talking about. So I think they're open to Bill de Blasio, but it would be nice if there was some reciprocation in terms of bringing some Catholics on board.
Do you think this is happening because the Catholic Church is seen as being maybe too conservative and so pushing itself out of the mainstream?
I don't think so necessarily. Certainly on national issues, de Blasio campaign and the church are not on the same page. But what we're really talking about here are local issues. And on the local front, the Catholic Church is very involved in serving the poor through parishes, through schools. They're still a big player in that part. So I don't think it would be a good idea to marginalize them. Even if you don't agree with them, I think you need to work with them.
Right. We're talking about, 2 Protestant ministers.
Mm-hmm.
Are Protestants gaining more power in New York?
Well, that's interesting. I mean, definitely, I was surprised that, as I said before, there were these religious voices included. And traditionally, the narrative is that Protestants are kind of, the numbers are declining, certainly in New York City. So it was surprising. But they are involved in a lot of these grassroots political organizations. They have connections there. So I think, and it seems to be the world that de Blasio comes from, and his wife, who's very influential, I think has some connections there. So that may explain it.
Do you think in the future there should be more ethnic groups, religious leaders that are involved in the transition team?
I think it's a good thing that he's including these religious voices. I mean, I think anybody who's mayor of New York, even if they're not personally religious, has to acknowledge that's a big part of what this city is. I was saying earlier, Mayor Koch, when he was mayor, used to sit in the front seat of St. Patrick's Cathedral, and he had a good relationship with Cardinal O'Connor. So that was something, even though he wasn't Catholic, he knew that Cardinal O'Connor, spoke for a lot of Catholics in this city. So I think Cardinal Dolan plays a similar role now. So I would hope, for example, that Bill de Blasio reaches out to the Cardinal.
Do you think Bill de Blasio's decision has impacted his relationship with the Catholic community in New York?
I would hope that people would see it for perhaps maybe a mistake on his part, but not something that was necessarily intentional or that he's out to, he's not targeting the church. I don't think that's necessarily the case. I hope that most Catholic groups would see it and say, I hope you're willing to engage with us. Because in the long term, he's going to be mayor for at least 4 years. We need to work with him. So hopefully it's going to be, the first mistake, but maybe we can rectify it later.
Do you think that the Catholic community's power is waning a little bit?
In the city, I mean, a little. I think you could make that case. I mean, I think it's probably a little less influential than it was in the days of, Mayor Giuliani was Catholic. I mentioned Cardinal O'Connor, who was such a big presence. So I think the city's always getting new immigrants, and a lot of them are not Catholics. You got people coming from Bangladesh, so you have more Muslims moving to the city. So, and you have Irish and Italians who've been moving out. So their influence in numbers may be going down, but they still run a lot of institutions in this city. So I think their presence will always be here.
Great. Well, thank you, Tim.
Thank you.
Still to come on the show, a Cameroonian filmmaker tries to find some levity in African immigration issues. Before that, Abby Ishola has some other news.
Thanks, Zyphus. Here's a look at some headlines from New York's ethnic and community media. From Gotham Schools, a new school in Bedford-Stuyvesant opening in honor of Nelson Mandela will likely soothe tensions within the area's school district. Boys and Girls High School, a longtime symbol of the neighborhood, has become a poor performer, receiving 3 Fs in a row from the city. But things could change for the school as plans to open the Nelson Mandela School of Social Justice within Boys and Girls are taking shape. Boys and Girls principal Bernard Gassaway and members of its advisory committee initially rejected the idea of having a school open within the school. But Mandela's name and legacy have since warmed people up to the idea. Bodegas across the city are selling goods on credit to people who are struggling financially. Jose Fernandez, president of the National Bodega Federation, told El Diario La Prensa that over the past few weeks, there's been a 25% increase in the practice of selling on credit. This is partially due to federal budget cuts to the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, or SNAP. The credit system allows trusted customers to put food items on an informal account the store creates for them in good faith. The Forward reports that the first Asian American woman has been appointed to lead one of the country's largest synagogues. Angela Warnick Buchdahl was voted as the senior rabbi of Central Synagogue. She is the first woman to be ordained as a rabbi and a cantor, and the first Asian American to hold both positions. Buchdahl's father is an American Jew. Her mother is a Korean Buddhist. Chelsea Now took a look at how Hell's Kitchen is changing. The area between 34th Street and West 59th was once made up of low-rise walk-ups. It was also a hub for business and manufacturing. Today, new high-rise residential buildings are changing the face of the neighborhood. Plans to change the area began in 2005 after the Hudson Yards and West Clinton were rezoned. Bonnie Brower, a resident in the area and housing activist, opposes the changes, saying it feels like a banana republic being colonized. And finally, 3 New York residents have turned a forbidden Puerto Rican drink into a unique business venture. William Valentine and Rafael Barbosa opened the Port Morris Distillery in the Bronx, where they manufacture Pitoro, a beloved Puerto Rican rum that's illegal there. The two came up with the idea to start the business in New York after they learned Valentine's uncle Rafael had a secret recipe that he used since he was a young boy making Pitoro in Puerto Rico. To this day, Rafael is so secretive about making it, he wouldn't give El Diario La Prensa his last name. The 3 business partners say they are the only ones to age Pitoro, which they bottle and sell for $30. Those were just a few headlines from New York's ethnic and community media. Independent Sources will be back right after this.
Okay, here's the idea. Why don't we, why don't I get divorced to you artificially, and then get married to somebody else, and then get married to you so
What?
we can stay here in America.
Excuse me? So you want to... Thank you.
Thank you.
So you,
Thank you,
I
Precious.
mean, so you telling me you want to marry another woman?
No. Listen to me. Listen to me.
Please.
Listen to me.
I don't want to
Listen to
hear
me.
it. I'm serious. I don't want to hear it. I mean, are you serious or are you kidding me?
What you just saw was a clip from the film Coming from Africa. The movie stars Blaze Stitchett as an African immigrant who encounters great hardship as he tries to adjust his visa status in the US. Stitchett is also the executive producer on the film. He and Cameroonian musician Black Buchan joined me in studio to talk about finding a market for African music and movies here in New York. Blaze Stitchett and Ale Gando, thank you guys for being in studio with us today.
Oh, thank you so
It's a pleasure.
So Blaze, tell us about your film, Coming from Africa.
Okay, I did make Coming from Africa to show the immigration and to show people how stressful it is to when people are applying for an extension of the visa, or maybe legal immigrant try to extend their visa, how stressful it is. So it's just to send a message to, if they can speed up the process, that would be better.
So Blaze, you wrote, directed, and you starred in this film as well, master of all trades, if you will. Tell us a little bit about the film itself.
Okay, I did produce the movie, and then I did write the movie, okay? But my role as an actor, I am an architect, okay, an engineer. I finished my studies, I completed my studies, and then I found a good job, and my working visa is about to expire in 3 months, and then I'm trying everything possible to get the visa renewed. But the process is so long that I will be illegal by the time it's approved or not. So I'm trying everything eventually to marry an American woman.
Now, tell me a little bit, is this something that's faced by a lot of African immigrants to this country?
Not only African immigrants, all immigrants, yes, it is, but it's a serious problem because immigrants here, they come, a lot of them come to succeed, and by succeeding, also they contribute. It's a win-win situation. That means the American government benefits from receiving taxes when they work. At the same time, also they get better life too. So that's what I'm trying to showcase, and the fact that the process takes long, and America has the best technology for everything to send people in the moon. So. Right. To speed up the process, I don't think it should be a big challenge for America to do that.
Now, you've actually working on another film, and Black, you are involved with creating music for that film. Tell me a little bit about this new film that you're creating, and then Black will come to you and ask about your involvement in it.
Yes, the new film is about, is The Greedy Realtor. Is about the mess that happened in the economy just recently. I spent 4 years working for a mortgage company during that crisis, trying to help people to get out of, trouble, financial trouble, modify the loan. That's what I was doing. So the film is about showing how real estate agents try to push people to get a higher loan that they couldn't afford. So pushing them to have 2 jobs, 3 jobs, knowing that they're gonna quit after their back hurt because they work so hard. And they are foreclosing on their property, and then they are trying to get that real estate agent who... So it's about that.
Okay. So Black, tell me a little bit about your involvement in the film. I know you're creating some music for it as well. What's your inspiration for your music in the film?
Yeah, actually, when I saw Coming from Africa, I was very excited, and my dream was to be part of the team that gonna be at that time do movie with Blaze, and I was lucky to be selected in between so many musicians to come and give him a hand to perform and write some lyric and stuff.
So for the audience who doesn't know, both of you are Cameroonian, which is from Africa. Is your music influenced by your Cameroonian heritage?
Yeah, actually, I have it. I have that influence, and I'm trying to combine all type of music and put it in with an African beat so that everybody can enjoy it. Yeah.
Now, in both of your cases, you're both entertainers. Is there, you know, in New York City in itself, there's not a very large African community. Is there a market I'll go to you first, Blaze, and then to you, Black. Is there a market for that sort of entertainment here in New York City that, you know, you guys are?
That's a very good question, but you know, as an artist, yes, there's always a market for everything. New York is the center of the world. I can say that it's a melting pot. But the type of movie that I'm trying to make is universal. It's general. Like you just asked me if a lot of Africans are affected by coming from that situation. I say it's everybody. Indian, you know, Japanese, everybody. That's what people don't understand. There's a lot of European here in this country illegal. So it's everybody. Yes. French, Irish,
Right.
and you know.
Right. But what about you, Black? Do you find that there's a real there's a real audience for African music in the city?
Of course, yes. As he said, we're trying to touch everybody, especially African. And I heard by doing some performing with some artists in the area, we noticed that this is a place to come and maybe help everybody to know what we're doing. And I think here in New York, there's a lot of African.
And for you, Blaze, before we sign off, where can folks see your film coming from Africa?
I'm premiering in each state. I just premiered in Washington, D.C., Maryland. I'm going to premiere in West Virginia at Apollo Theater soon, in Minnesota, Los Angeles. So each city, each state, not each city. So progressively, I'm premiering in New York too.
Okay, all right. And what's the response been so far, just before we go?
Positive response.
Good, good.
My hand is tired because I keep shaking my hand. I feel like a big celebrity, you know.
Yeah, it's not easy to be known by everybody.
All right,
It's
well,
a message.
Blaze and Black, thank you both for being on the show today.
Oh,
Thank
thank
you.
you for having us.
All right, wonderful.
Thank you.
When we come back, one clergy woman takes community outreach into her own hands during the holiday season. Thanks for staying tuned. Coat drives and Toys for Tots are ubiquitous around this time of year, as people think of those less fortunate than they are. I sat down with Joyce Duggar, a clergywoman and teacher who's trying to keep her students warm during the holiday season. Joyce, thank you for being with us on the program today. So let's just start with a little bit about you. Could you tell the audience a little bit about who you are and your organization?
I'm Reverend Joyce Duggar, and I'm the chaplain at Hofstra University. And I also work as a public school teacher in East New York, on Pennsylvania and Hegerman, the New Lock School. And I also am affiliated with Women in New York State Ministry, Wimsley. So I'm busy. I have my hands in 3 areas, but each area is all about service and service to children.
Absolutely. Now, I know you're very involved in a program to help children, as you mentioned.
Yes.
Could you tell me a little bit about what you do?
Well, 3 years ago, I was in a public school working, and a student came in. It was a very cold day, and had a T-shirt. And we were all looking like, what's wrong with this picture? So I walked over to the child and I said, well, you know, you okay? And they explained to me that they were living in a shelter, that this is what they had. And I said, okay. I said, well, you know what, I'm gonna bring you something. And I went to the principal and I talked to the guidance counselor. And I said, well, can I do this? And they was like, oh, I'm not sure. You have to talk to the parents. So being a clergy, I said, you know what, I can do this as a service. So that's what I started to go around to several public schools and go to the guidance counselor to see if children needed coats. And then we donate coats to children in need. We give them directly to the children. We speak to the parents So there's no red tape.
All right, and now this issue of red tape, under normal circumstances in schools,
Right.
you wouldn't be able to do this, correct?
No, I would not be able to do it.
All right, so tell us a little bit about why.
Because they have a clause where you can't spend so much money on children, and they just, parents may say the child is allergic, or it could just be a lot of red tape and going to this school and going to that principal. So I just said, okay, as a clergy, this is service. I can do this personally. I'm not asking for any money from anyone, and we just give it out of our own pocket.
Wow. So now you say we. Tell me a little bit about who you're working with.
Women in Ministry of State New York I'm a co-convener, and I think it's about 10 of us, and we gather and we try to service the community outside of church, because church is church, but people have real needs, right. And they don't always go to church to really get their needs, but they'll come to you outside of church. So we meet their needs by speaking real subjects: menopause, children, going through changes, divorce, just real issues, finances, and they can be themselves.
In this case right now with assisting school
Young
children,
yes.
with their coats and so forth. How many coats do you get through your drive? I guess this is an annual thing now.
Now it's beginning to be an annual thing. This year we have about 50. We're doing about 50 students. And hopefully next year, as it begins to grow, we'll do more.
Do you have any hopes to perhaps get any sort of outside assistance? I know you said that you kind of do it out of your own pockets, but right now, do you think that this is something you can grow?
We're putting that on the table for January. Do we really want to maybe do a coat drive, but we don't want it to be so commercialized, because we don't want families to, people are very quiet when they are in poverty. Some people do not want you to know. So because they're students in school, we want to protect their rights. So we do it like a Secret Santa. So they really don't feel awkward.
Mm-hmm. And so there are no pictures, no
There's
video?
No pictures, no nothing. We just give it to, I'll call the parent, we'll let the parents know they cry, they're happy, and life is good.
Right.
And the child comes to school with a coat. And you can see, and it makes a difference. Like, they come to school, they're happier, they're doing their homework, they don't feel ashamed, they don't wear 3 layers of clothing, because this is what's going on in my 5th grade class now. I have several students that I will be donating coats to this week, because we're having a Secret Santa Christmas party on Friday. So I'm going to wrap them under the tree, and they won't know I did it. It would just be a gift.
Right, and this is how you distribute them at the Secret Santa parties?
Right, Secret Santa parties, or we'll meet them after school, and we'll just have Santa give it to them, or I'll take it to one of them, and then we let the parents know that they got a gift, and it came from one of us, and they're so grateful.
Right, right. Now, is this something that, for instance, is anybody kind of following your example a little bit? Because I know there are several coat drives at this time of year.
There's several coat drives. I have a teacher now at my school. Miss Brewer said something to me the other day. She said, you know what, I might want to join you. I was like, okay, great. So I think she's going to pick up some coats herself. But it was a personal, so I didn't want to get too many people involved, because then it becomes a real big project and dates, but I think it's a need. So I think we're going to expand it next year.
That's great. So eventually it's not going to be just coats and so forth. It may very well be other things in the future.
It'll be other things also. But right now for the winter, it's just coats.
Joyce Duggar, thank you very much for being in studio with us today.
And thank you for having me.
Finally from us, apart from being a time for giving, the holidays are also about celebrating tradition, whether it's something started by an ancestor or an ethnic icon. As we've come to find out, many of the communities we cover celebrate the holidays and New Year with delicious food, especially bread. Sarah Bisson spoke with Louis-Jean Egas, CEO of the French bakery Chez Maison Kayser, and Nick Nikolopoulos, pastry chef and owner of the Greek bakery Bay Ridge Bakery, about the breads eaten during the New Year.
This smells delicious and it looks incredible. Can you please tell us what we're looking at? What are these galettes, breads, what are they? Nick, what are we looking at?
Well, this is the St. Basil's Vasilopita. It's the Greek New Year's bread. It's in honor of St. Basil.
And what about the galettes? What are they?
This is our traditional king cake. It's a puff pastry that we serve to celebrate the Epiphany. on January 6th. This has become a very popular pastry from in France, and we actually serve it throughout the whole month of January.
Tell us a little bit behind the tradition of the galettes. How did it start?
Well, so it's really to celebrate, as I said, the Epiphany, and what we do actually is what we call tirer les rois, to draw the king, meaning that we're going to designate the king. How does that work? We have little porcelain charms that usually traditionally are being hidden inside the pastry. We are going to slice usually the exact number of guests that you have around the table. And the way it works is the youngest person around the table is going to hide under the table, and the person serving the cake is going to ask who is the next slice for, and that person will designate the next slice and name the person. This is to ensure that this is a complete random distribution of the slice, because the idea is that the person who actually finds the charms is being designated the king. And that's the idea behind the king cake.
Why is it the youngest person that designates the
well,
pie?
I think it's I guess with the young goes innocence, and since it has to be the luck of the draw, so that was the idea behind it.
And you said something about how in France the charm is inside the cake, but not in America. Why so?
Yes. Well, you know, in France, everybody is used to the tradition, so they know that they have to expect a porcelain inside the cake. You know, when you're not used to maybe this tradition, it might be surprising to chew on the piece of porcelain in the cake. So we let actually the people put the charm inside the cake.
Okay, great. And what about in the Greek tradition? Is there something similar? How does the whole process work?
Yeah, in each bread there is a gold coin, well, gold plated these days. And the tradition is that you cut the Vasilopita on New Year's Day. And it's the history behind it is that there was an emperor that imposed a big tax on a very poor population, and they couldn't afford it. So they gave their last coins and their jewels, and they just really knocked them to their knees. So St. Basil was an archbishop, and he found out about this, and he went and said, please repent, please take this tax away from my people. And the emperor did, to everyone's surprise. But now St. Basil inherited an issue. How am I going to distribute everyone's jewels? And so he baked the bread, and he baked the jewels in each bread, and he distributed the bread. And a miracle happened where everyone got what they initially invested into the tax. And since then, we cut this Vasilopita in honor of the poor and the good life that we have.
Great. And so what does it mean to receive the coin or the charm on the days? What's the...
Well, to receive the coin, it's good luck, prosperity, and basically, again, the kids love it, and something to look forward to at New Year's. It's also a way of remembering how many people don't have the gifts. It's after Christmas, and that's about it.
And who cuts the cake? How does it work?
The Greek tradition, it's always the head of the household, whether usually it's the father or the oldest person in the household. It could be a grandfather. These days it could be anyone, but in my home it's still, if my father's there, it's my father. If I'm there, it's my house, and I cut it. And you start from Jesus Christ gets the first slice, your home gets the second slice for prosperity and health and happiness in your home, and then we go around in clockwise order, from the oldest to the youngest.
Great. Well, thank you so much. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
That's our show this week. On behalf of all the good folks here at Independent Sources, we want to wish you and your family happy holidays and a wonderful new year. Before we leave, just a program note. Join us in 2 weeks for a new Independent Sources, when we'll take a look back at some of our favorite stories from 2013. Till then, be independent-minded.